Have you ever looked at a simple English sentence, understood every single word, but had no idea what it actually meant? Like, I was supposed to meet her, but I bailed last minute. And you think, wait, what's supposed to? Why did he bail? Bail what? That was me, Daniel. I had been learning English for over 10 years. But somehow, even after all that time, I still couldn't follow a simple conversation between native speakers. I remember once reading a restaurant review that said, "The food slapped, but the service was mid." I had no clue if that was good or bad. I actually thought the food got slapped. But let me take you back to where it all began. Because my struggle with English wasn't just about words or grammar. It was about identity. About feeling like I was always 10 steps behind. About standing silently in conversations where I had so much to say, just not in the right language. I grew up in a small town where English was just a subject in school. Textbooks, tests, repeating grammar rules I barely understood. I was the kind of student who always passed, but never spoke. I knew what a gerund was, but I couldn't order a sandwich in English without panicking. And the worst part, I thought I was the problem. That I just wasn't language smart. That I had a slow brain. But everything changed the day I met someone who made me question all of that. It was a regular Tuesday. I was 26, working as a part-time tech assistant at a small co-working space in my city. That day, an international startup team booked a meeting room. And that's where I saw her, Emily. She walked in with a bright yellow notebook, a messy bun, and a smile that made the whole place feel lighter. She was American, UX designer. And when she asked, "Hi, can I get the HDMI adapter?" I blanked. I understood every word she said. But somehow my mouth forgot how to speak. My brain scrambled. I pointed at the drawer awkwardly and muttered, "Yes. Okay. Cable, yes." She smiled kindly like she didn't even notice. But I did. And for the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking. Why? Why can't I say one normal sentence when it matters? That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just because of her. Although yes, I was definitely intrigued. It was because I felt defeated. I had spent years studying English. Memorized thousands of words. Passed university exams. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that effort. And I still sounded like I was just learning. And the truth was, I had been studying English. But I wasn't using it. So I made a decision. From that day on, I wouldn't try to be perfect. I wouldn't focus on test scores. I would focus on connection, on communication, on finally understanding and being understood. And I started small, very small. The next morning I picked one sentence. Just one. "Can I help you with anything?" I practiced it 10 times before going to work. I whispered it on the bus. I said it while pretending to type. When I saw Emily at the coffee machine, I took a breath. My heart pounded. And I said it, awkwardly, quietly, but I said it. She turned, smiled again and said, "Oh, that's sweet of you. I'm good, thanks." That sentence alone gave me more joy than any English exam ever had. 'Cause it was real. After that, I changed my entire learning approach. No more 50-word vocab lists. No more grammar worksheets. I started building my English around real conversations, real people and real emotions. But let me be honest, it wasn't easy. Not at all. One night, I was watching a YouTube video about design, trying to understand Emily's world better. The speaker said, "We wanted to lean into the friction to find a more intuitive flow." Pause. I rewound. I wrote down "lean into the friction." I Googled it. I couldn't find a clear explanation. I was frustrated. Again. Felt like giving up. But instead of quitting, I did something different. I wrote down that phrase on a sticky note, and I asked Emily the next time I saw her, "What does lean into the friction mean in design?" She looked surprised, then excited. "Wow, that's a great question." And she explained it patiently, giving me examples, even drawing a little diagram on a napkin. That was the moment I realized something huge. Learning English wasn't just about me. Could be a bridge, a way to connect, not just to ideas but to people. And with that realization, my motivation shifted. I didn't want to learn English to pass a test. I wanted to learn English to understand someone, to ask better questions, to laugh at the right time, to really hear what someone was saying and let them hear me too. And slowly, day by day, I kept building that bridge. The first real conversation I ever had with Emily happened by accident. She was standing by the printer, frowning. The screen blinked with some kind of error code. I was supposed to just go fix it and leave. But instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Looks like the printer's having a bad day." I couldn't believe I made a joke in English. She laughed. "Seriously? I think it's mad at me." We chatted for about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Felt like a lifetime. I remember every word I said because I practiced each one the night before. I had even rehearsed how I'd say error with the correct R sound. Not EO. Not era. Just error. That conversation gave me more confidence than any vocabulary app ever had. I started looking for small, natural ways to talk. One sentence at a time. But that also meant facing my bad habits, and I had a lot of them. For example, I used to write down every new word I saw. I had a notebook full of isolated words like despite, intend, however, consequence. No context, just words. I thought memorizing them would make me fluent. Spoiler, it didn't. One day I asked myself, do I actually know how to use the word despite in a real sentence? I didn't. So I changed my method. Every time I found a new word, I wrote down the full sentence, not just the word. For example, despite the rain, we went hiking. Then I made a second sentence that related to my own life. Despite my fear, I spoke to Emily. This small shift changed everything. Because I wasn't just learning words anymore. I was learning how I could use them. Personally. Emotionally. Here's another habit I broke. Rewatching videos with subtitles on all the time. I used to think subtitles helped me understand. But actually they made me lazy. I wasn't listening. I was reading. So I created a new rule. First watch. No subtitles. Second watch. English subtitles. Third watch. Only audio. First it was torture. But over time I realized something surprising. Even when I didn't understand every word, I started catching patterns. Intonation. Filler words. Emotion. One video I loved was about traveling solo. The speaker said, "I was terrified, but I booked the ticket anyway. I figured if I don't go now, I never will." I played that sentence 10 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I felt it. It reminded me of how I felt every time I talked to Emily. Terrified, but doing it anyway. One afternoon, she invited me to join a small lunch group. Just her 2 other colleagues and me. I wanted to say no. I almost did. But I remembered that video. If I don't go now, I never will. So I went. And I survived. No, I didn't understand every joke. Yes, I nodded a few times even though I wasn't sure what was being said. But I stayed. I listened. And I spoke. I remember at one point Emily asked, "Daniel, do you like hiking?" Now this seems like a simple question. But when you're not fluent, even that can feel like solving a puzzle. In my head I thought, Wait, is it I like hiking or I like to hike? And do I say, I like hiking very much? Or just I like hiking? Or is that too formal? But I smiled and said, yes, I like hiking. I try to go once a month. Nature is relaxing. She nodded. Totally. Nature resets me. That phrase, resets me, was new to me. But I didn't ask. I just noted it in my phone. Later I looked it up. Nature resets me equals nature helps me feel balanced again. I loved that. It was the kind of phrase no textbook ever taught me. And that's when I realized another important lesson. Real English doesn't come from textbooks. Comes from people. From inside jokes. From quiet moments. From things you overhear at lunch or in a hallway. After that, I stopped thinking of English as something I had to pass. Instead, I saw it as a living thing, something I could interact with, grow with, make mistakes with. I even started keeping a special Emily journal. I didn't tell her, of course. That would have been too awkward. In that journal I wrote down a new phrases she used, a words I didn't know, a sentences I wanted to say but couldn't. One day she said something that stuck with me. I love how coffee shops feel like mini worlds. Like you're sitting in your own bubble, but you're not alone. It was such a beautiful way to describe something so ordinary. I wrote it down that night. Mini worlds. Your own bubble. But not alone. That sentence stayed with me not just for English learning but for life. Because that's how I started to see our conversations. Little mini worlds. Where I was learning, growing, and slowly becoming myself in a second language. I still made mistakes. I once said, I'm boring when I meant, I'm bored. Emily laughed gently and said, you're definitely not boring. Moments like that made me realize. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about daring to be a little uncomfortable so you can become someone new. And as those mini conversations grew, so did our connection. The first time I truly felt like myself in English was during a thunderstorm. Emily and I were at a small coffee shop near our office. We had planned to just grab a quick drink and go. But the sky turned gray so fast, and then the rain came loud, heavy, and endless. We were stuck inside with 2 cups of coffee, a cinnamon roll, and no excuse to leave. For once, I wasn't nervous. I told her about how I used to run through storms as a kid back in my hometown. How my brother and I would put buckets on our heads and pretend we were knights in battle. She laughed so hard, she nearly choked on her coffee. That laugh, it was like a door opening. It didn't matter that I paused sometimes, or that I didn't know how to say, bucket helmet, properly. What mattered was that she got the story. She got me. I think that's when things really started to change. But let me be honest with you. Getting to that point didn't just take practice. Took strategy. Tip 1. Speak before you're ready. One thing I learned the hard way is that you'll never feel ready to speak. Ever. I used to tell myself, I'll start speaking after I learn 100 more words. I'll talk after I finish this grammar book. I'll wait until I can speak perfectly. But perfection never comes. And by waiting, I was losing the chance to build confidence, the real key to communication. So I created what I call the 30-second courage rule. If I have a chance to speak English, I give myself 30 seconds to do it. No overthinking. No hiding. Just say something. I applied this at work, in cafes, even at the gym. It didn't matter if it was just ordering coffee or asking where the towels were. I spoke. Sometimes I said silly things. One time I meant to say, it's chilly today, but I said, it's chicken today. The barista stared at me. I laughed. So did he. That moment taught me more about real English than 10 pages of grammar exercises. Tip 2. Listen like a musician, not a student. I used to listen to English like I was trying to decode it. Like every sentence was a puzzle. Now I listen like a musician. I pay attention to rhythm, stress, melody. I'll give you an example. Emily once said, "You're not serious, right?" But she didn't say it like a textbook. She said it fast and light. "You're not serious, right?" 3 words became one sound. And the real meaning was in her tone, not the words. That moment changed how I studied listening. I stopped focusing only on meaning. I started focusing on sound. So now, when I hear something I want to remember, I 1. Play it 3 times. 2. Repeat it out loud, exactly as I heard it. 3. Record myself and compare. This shadowing method helped me more than any classroom had. Tip 3. Fall in love with small victories. I used to measure progress in big goals. Fluent by the end of the year. Have a full conversation. Understand movies without subtitles. But I kept failing and feeling like a failure. Until I changed the metric. Now I celebrate tiny victories. I said a full sentence without pausing. I understood a joke. I learned a new phrase and used it that same week. One day I said to Emily, "This coffee tastes burnt, huh?" She smiled, surprised. That's such a native way to say it. I had picked up that phrase from a podcast just 2 days earlier. That small moment kept me motivated for a whole week. So I started keeping a small wins list. Each week, I wrote down 3 moments where I used English successfully. No matter how tiny, no matter how awkward, it was proof that I was growing. And I want to be clear. Growth doesn't feel like fireworks. Feels like showing up when it's hard. Feels like choosing courage over comfort, again and again. About 2 months after the thunderstorm day, Emily asked if I wanted to join her and some friends for a weekend hike. Almost said no. Group conversations were my biggest fear. One-on-one was manageable. But a group. Too many accents, too fast, too chaotic. But I remembered something from my journal. If I always stay in safe zones, I'll never build real fluency. So I said yes. And I was right, it was chaotic. People talked over each other. Switched topics mid-sentence. I missed half of what they said. But I stayed. And halfway through the hike I made a joke. Just one. I don't even remember what it was. But everyone laughed. That laugh. It was different. Because it wasn't about English anymore. It was about connection. About being part of something. Later, when we reached the top of the hill, Emily stood beside me, smiling at the view. She said, "You've really come a long way, Daniel." And I knew she wasn't just talking about the trail. There are some moments in life that seem small when they happen, like a single drop of rain. But later you realize that was the moment everything began to change. For me, that moment happened in a park just before sunset. Emily and I had been spending more time together. At work, grabbing dinner, even texting. I was getting used to using English with her, slowly building confidence, even when my grammar wasn't perfect or when I had to ask her to repeat something. But something had shifted. I didn't just want to practice English anymore. I wanted to tell her things I'd never said out loud before. So one Saturday evening we went for a walk. It was spring, and the cherry blossoms had just started blooming. I remember the air smelled like fresh grass and coffee from the little kiosk near the lake. We found a bench under one of the trees and sat there for a while, watching the light change from gold to soft pink. And then she said, "You've changed a lot since we first met." I laughed. "What do you mean?" "You talk more. You joke more. You even look more relaxed." I thought about how, just 6 months earlier, I could barely introduce myself without freezing up. How I used to rehearse sentences in my head and still mess them up. How afraid I was of not being enough. And now, I was here. Sitting next to someone who made me feel seen, understood. That's when I decided to tell her the truth. I took a deep breath and said, I used to hate English. She turned to me, eyebrows raised. Really? He nodded. Not the language exactly, just how it made me feel. Like I was always behind. Like I was always trying to catch up. But now, it feels different. Then I added, learning English helped me find you. I didn't plan those words. They just came out. Simple, honest, little shaky. There was a moment of silence. My heart was racing. She looked at me. Not surprised. Not confused. Just calm. Then she smiled softly and said, that might be the sweetest sentence I've ever heard. That was the turning point. Not just in our relationship but in my journey with English. Because for the first time I wasn't using English to pass a test. I wasn't using it to impress anyone. I was using it to connect. To say something real. That evening I realized, English wasn't just a skill I was learning. It had become a bridge to a life I never imagined I could have. Why that moment mattered. Until that day, I still saw English as a barrier. Sure, I had made progress. I was less nervous. I could speak in meetings, understand jokes, follow podcasts. But part of me still thought, you're not truly fluent. You're still behind. But when I spoke from the heart, and she understood me completely, I realized something important. You don't need perfect English to say something meaningful. Let me say that again. You don't need perfect grammar or a big vocabulary, or a native accent to make someone feel something. What you need is honesty. And I think that's what changed everything for me. From that day on, I stopped obsessing over sounding native. Focused on sounding human. I allowed myself to make mistakes. I stopped correcting every sentence in my head before speaking. I started having deeper conversations. Not longer ones, just more honest. And you know what? Those conversations taught me more English than any textbook ever did. Real connection, perfect performance. Let me give you a practical example. In the past, I used to rehearse what I'd say to Emily. For example, before ordering lunch together, I'd plan. I'll ask her what she wants to eat. Then I'll suggest the Thai place. Then maybe make a joke about how spicy it is. But in real life, conversations don't go as planned. Now I just listen. I respond. Ask questions. I make mistakes. I laugh at them. That freedom made everything better. My English, my confidence, my relationships. And if you're watching this thinking, I want that too, but I'm still stuck in grammar rules and fear. I want to tell you this. You don't need to wait for some perfect moment to be ready. You can start building that connection now. Whether you're speaking to a friend, a coworker, or someone you love, you have something valuable to say. Even if you say it slowly, even if you make mistakes, people who care will listen. A few weeks after that evening in the park, Emily and I officially became a couple. Felt natural, easy, like something that had been growing slowly and finally reached full bloom. And yes, we still had our moments. There were times when I struggled to express a deeper emotion. Times when I wished I could switch to my native language just to say exactly what I meant. But I learned how to say it in other ways. With stories. With eye contact. With patience. And every time I tried, she met me halfway. That's when I understood. Language is a team sport. You don't have to do it alone. Looking back now, it almost feels like a dream. If someone had told me a few years ago that I'd be living in another country, speaking English every day, and in a relationship with someone I once couldn't even talk to fluently, I would have laughed and said, that's impossible. But here I am. And the biggest lesson I've learned is this. Learning English isn't just about speaking a new language. It's about becoming a new version of yourself. The confident version. the expressive version, the connected, curious, open-hearted version. 3 lessons I wish I knew earlier. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with 3 lessons I wish someone had told me at the beginning of my journey. These are not from a textbook, they're from real life. 1. Don't study English for English's sake. Connect it to what matters to you. When I studied random vocabulary lists like abundant, mitigate, consequence, I forgot them within days. But when I needed to say, I enjoyed spending time with you, or I'm nervous because I like you, those phrases stuck, because they were tied to emotions. So ask yourself, what do I want to say in my life? What stories do I want to tell? Who do I want to connect with? Then build your English around that. 2. Stop trying to sound native. Start trying to sound honest. I used to copy British podcasts and memorize fancy expressions like, at the end of the day, or to be perfectly frank. But when I said them, I felt like I was wearing someone else's jacket, one that didn't quite fit. Now I use words that feel like me. Instead of saying, I'm extremely grateful for your presence, say, I'm really glad you're here. Simple, real, and more powerful. 3. Don't wait for fluency to live your life. Start now with what you have. Too many learners think, once I'm fluent, I'll apply for that job. Once I'm fluent, I'll talk to that person. Once I'm fluent, I'll travel or fall in love. But fluency is not a finish line. It's a journey. And if you keep waiting, life will pass you by. Start living your English story now. Use the words you know. Make the mistakes you need to. Learn as you go. And let English grow around your real life. What my life looks like now. Emily and I have been together for 2 years now. We've traveled to 5 countries. We've made awkward jokes in different time zones. We've argued over silly things and made up with laughter. Sometimes she still helps me with pronunciation. Sometimes I teach her a word in my native language. And every now and then we look at each other and say, can you believe it all started because of English? To this day I keep learning. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because every new word, every better sentence, is another way to express love, friendship, curiosity, and who I'm becoming. A final word to you watching this. If you're watching this video right now and thinking, but I'm still struggling. I still feel stuck. Let me tell you something from my heart. So did I. I failed speaking tests. I froze in front of coworkers. I forgot basic words like mirror and schedule. But I didn't give up. And you won't either, because deep down, you already know this isn't just about grammar or vocabulary. This is about becoming someone who can express themselves fully. In any language. To anyone. Anywhere. And that version of you. They're already on the way. So here's what I want you to do next. 1. Leave a comment below and tell me. What is the one phrase or sentence you wish you could say in English right now? Could be something romantic, something deep, something funny. I'll read the comments and help you express it clearly in the next video. 2. Rewatch this video, not to memorize tips but to feel the progress. See how far you've come. See how much more is possible. 3. If this story helped you, please share it with someone who needs encouragement. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing that you're not alone. And lastly, if you want to keep learning with me, subscribe, hit the bell, and join the next episode. Next time, I'll show you how to improve your English listening using just 15 minutes a day. No subtitles, no stress. Just one podcast technique that changed everything for me. But until then, remember, you don't need perfect English to live a beautiful life. You just need the courage to keep speaking. Thanks for being here. See you in the next video.